we need to talk about a family. A family that got rich by killing people. A family that built a dynasty on a mountain of bodies. Today, we talk about the Sacklers. 500,000. Just look at that number. Let it sit there for a second. 500,000. That's not just a number. That's 500,000 souls. 500,000 people who died from an overdose. They could have been your friends, your family, your neighbors. Just gone.
And you know what the sickest part is? This entire ocean of grief, this plague of death, it wasn't an accident. It was a choice. It was the deliberate, calculated work of one family.
So, how did they do it? How did they unleash this hell? It all began with a lie. A single, simple lie. But this lie was a weapon. And it killed. Back in the 90s, the Sackler company, Purdue Pharma, had a new product to sell, a painkiller called OxyContin. And they had one hell of a sales pitch for doctors, for everyone. They looked the world in the eye and said, "This is not addictive." That was a lie. A disgusting, calculated lie. A criminal falsehood cooked up for one reason, and one reason only. To make money. To sell as many of these little pills as humanly possible. And how did they sell it? Oh, they got clever. They bribed doctors. Yeah, they went after the very people we're supposed to trust with our lives, and they corrupted them. The message was simple. In pain, don't worry, this is safe. The promise was a cure. But the reality was a one-way ticket to a living hell. They were selling a product just as addictive as street heroin, and they were doing it with a doctor's signature. So you can imagine the roadmap, right? It was a conveyor belt to ruin. Step 1. You trust your doctor, you get a prescription for OxyContin. Step 2, you get hooked. It's not your fault, the stuff is designed to do that. Step 3, the prescription runs out. But the addiction, that doesn't go away. So what's next? You end up on the street, desperate, hunting for heroin to feed the demon the Sackler family put inside you. And while all of this was happening, while communities were being torn apart and families were burying their children, where were the Sacklers? What were they doing? They were getting rich. Unimaginably rich. $35 billion. Let's be clear about what this is. This isn't wealth. This is blood money. Every single dollar is stained with the suffering and death of another human being. And with that blood money, they became one of the top 20 richest families on the entire planet. A dynasty built on a foundation of shattered lives and utter despair. But here's where it gets even more twisted. To the public, they weren't villains. Oh no. They were philanthropists. Respected elites who donated to museums. But what was the truth behind the fancy galas? They were drug dealers. Nothing more, nothing less. Just monsters in $1,000 suits who architected a plague for profit. You've probably seen their name, the Sackler Wing. They splashed it across museums and universities all over the world. They took the money they made from death and used it to try and wash their name clean. They hoped that if they bought enough art, people would forget about all the bodies. So, what about justice? After all this death, after all this destruction, surely there was a reckoning. What was the punishment for a crime of this magnitude? Well, prepare to be disgusted. So, in 2020, their company went bankrupt, and the family agreed to pay a settlement. $6 billion. And I know $6 billion sounds like a lot of money, right? But let's put that in perspective. Remember how much they made from this whole scheme? $35 billion. That's just 15% of their fortune. 15%. To them, it wasn't a punishment. It was just the cost of doing business. A rounding error in exchange for orchestrating a national tragedy. Okay, so they paid a fine. Big deal. But what about real consequences? What about criminal charges? What about jail time for the people who knowingly did this? Not a single Sackler went to jail. So for the 500,000 people who are dead, there is no justice. The architects of their misery, the family responsible, they walk free. Right now, living in pure luxury in places like London and Switzerland, completely untouchable, protected by their billions. And if there's one thing to take away from this whole nightmare, it's this. The real villains, the real monsters, they don't always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes they're sitting in boardrooms, they're the ones who will let you die.